Welcome to Travel Tuesday, part of the Beard Bros Media Network, where culture meets industry. I'm your host, Brian Applegarth, founder of the Cannabis Travel Association International and the creator of the Cannabis Trail. Today, I serve as the head of tourism for Sunstone Brands and lead the Cannabis and Hemp Tourism Division for J&S Next, an award-winning full-service agency. We specialize in strategic initiatives that connect the cannabis sector with the travel and tourism industries. Whether you're a seasoned cannabis professional or just beginning to explore the space, you'll find insights, stories, and inspiration here on Travel Tuesday. This episode is centered on the rising intersection of wellness, well-being, and cannabis and hemp travel. As more travelers seek restorative and meaningful experiences, we're seeing immersive offerings like sound baths, forest walks, guided meditations, and culinary rituals all emerge, many enhanced with thoughtfully integrated cannabis or hemp. Today, we're joined by two leaders who are shaping this movement. Rose Moberly, a longtime cannabis professional and sound healing practitioner, creating transformational experiences in natural settings, and Felicity Chen, the founder of Potli, a brand that bridges health, heritage, and innovation through cannabis-infused and hemp-infused functional kitchen staples. Welcome, both of you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for having us.
Of course. Is there anything else you want to add to your introductions before we dive into the questions?
You crushed it.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, let's do background and origin stories first. And let's start with you, Rose. So, Rose, tell us about your journey. What brought you into this unique intersection of cannabis, wellness, and sound healing?
Yeah, good question. This is a very personal and deep journey for me. After a decade in corporate cannabis in Colorado, my mother became very ill with mantle cell lymphoma after experiencing breast cancer. And while going through that with her, I kind of lost my embodiment or my practices within myself. And at the same time as she was passing away, I was flying out here to Humboldt to teach small farmers metric, the seed to sales system. And so it kind of all intersected serendipitously that I wanted to change my lifestyle to something that was more slowed down, meaningful, intentional, with more wellness in mind, after seeing my mom, experience such a painful, horrible death at the age of 48. So that pretty much took my my cannabis use to another level. And when I got here to Humboldt, I never left. So it made it really, really impactful, I guess. I knew what I was doing, and the big change in my life was going to, really align with what I needed to do. And I know that, if my mom was still here today, she would say, that she was glad that I got out of the rat race, pretty much.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And important, and you can tell the depth of connection that journey has had. At what point, I know that the kind of sound healing has been a medium that has been a signature of yours. When did you first, I guess, get inspired by it, where it became something that you wanted to invest your time and attention into?
Yeah, great question. I think that was even before my mom got sick. I kind of was feeling the inconsistency of the cannabis industry as a whole, and I kind of started feeling this disconnection between, why I was using cannabis and what I was doing at work. And I actually bought a small Tibetan bowl set, and I just remember coming home after, having a very, very stressful day in corporate cannabis, and just sitting with that first Tibetan bowl set and just feeling like, I got the feeling back in my fingers and my toes. And I remembered why I was doing that. The work that drove me crazy was to spread the plant and spread the good stories in the word, right? But at one point there was such a big disconnect between my intentional emotions and the work that I was doing. And so yeah, sound really brought me back into my body and helped me realign.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rose.
Of course.
And Felicity, I've known you for years and watched amazing work unfold. in different phases and eras, places. It's been awesome watching you create over the years. What inspired you to start a brand in cannabis and or hemp that kind of leans into the wellness and culinary craft?
Absolutely. Well, my story's in a sense similar to Rose. It was really watching my mother. I'm so grateful to have such powerful female figures in my life. Um, I kind of grew up in my parents' warehouse. They wholesale and distribute sauces and spices that are very, in the specialty category for Asian customers, Chinese restaurants, beyond. And so I watched them, operate this small business where my mom was literally on the forklifts, moving big pallets of uh, inventory, which is like I thought that was normal, but that's totally different to most people's childhoods, and I'm so lucky to have that. But my mom's really anxious. She's so stressed out, and she doesn't know that. And what my father really brought to the business was this idea, like that even though Chinese food is so widely accessible because of the price, like it can also be healthy, and that's really important to him. And he practiced traditional Chinese medicine in China, and that was what he really brought to the business. And like, how can we make it more holistic? And so I'm watching my mom, who has severe anxiety and also asthma. Um, and my father, really cute, started a small kind of like bee colony to directly address the situation, knowing that my mom has asthma. And my kind of brain went off in 2000, one day in 2017. I was like, what if I put some weed in here? We could address a lot of these concerns, from my mother's anxiety to her issues with asthma and all of these things. And so we put some weed into this honey. On top of that, I grew up Asian American in this Asian American household. Like, weed is, basically like heroin. They like don't know the difference. And so my mom was really like concerned, like that, like, I don't want you to be hurting people. And I was like, this is the point. Like, we're here to heal. And when she started to like ritualize this, because she was already ritualizing honey into her wellness routine, she made, I call it auntie juice, but it's effectively like, ginger, honey, a little bit of jujubes. Like, this is the morning drink, right? It's a hot toddy, but like without the alcohol. Um, I just was like, wow, like that's what I want our customer to be. Someone that really ritualizes this into their daily wellness routine, and makes this a part of their daily life. And I'm so grateful. Like, we do have customers that buy from the case from me, who like use this as their medicine. And, our honey to this day is still harvested from our backyard. And it's all about that raw connection to what's locally available around you, and utilizing those things to eat your way to like become better, feel better.
Yeah. I mean, even in just this first part of this conversation, what's coming up is like this, for the well-being and wellness space, this concept of going beyond just an experience, where it leans into a ritual or a ceremony, which I think ties back into that like entheogenic capability of this plant and beyond, and all the other therapeutic compounds. But kind of as we roll, to keep, I think, pointing back to that and recognizing that and the uniqueness of that. In tourism, I'm constantly aware that this well-being vertical, beyond the biology and the endocannabinoid system and the receptors, into the spiritual health and the divine connection and the knowledge source and self-reflection and all these kind of more, I guess, metaphysical or entheogenic focused points, is really an interesting space that I almost say no other, or very few other travel products and experience occupy. And it kind of lives in this well-being and wellness vertical. Phil, growing up in the Bay Area, do you feel that your cultural heritage strongly shaped your brand philosophy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to, cut you off.
No, please.
But it's a blessing to live in the Bay Area. We have so much incredible produce, and it's a blessing to live in a place where there are so many different cultures. Like, it's not, there's a massive Asian culture here, but there's Latinx, there's Filipino, there's just like so many different flavors of just Asian, right? Like there's Indian, and then just within Chinese, there's just, so many different cuisines, and we can have that um, so authentic and so readily accessible and so high of quality because we live in California and like our produce here is so good. So when you layer all of those like elements of like Chinese cooking and which is generally very healthy, like somewhere it like went off the beaten path and it became like the unhealthy takeout. But like Chinese food is generally very, very balanced, right? And I grew up so lucky to have eaten at many different restaurants. Many of these like, retired uncles who no longer um run their restaurants anymore are like they're like family to me. Like they raised me, they, continue to cook for us and I get to learn from them these traditions that kind of skipped a generation because like I didn't get to like grow up where my mom cooked. Like my mom didn't cook. She's like that's not her thing, right? And so I just learned from them and I learned from having the ability and, blessing to just eat at so many different amazing chefs and also being just like growing up where you get exposed to so many different cultures of just
Right.
just being alive and just existing and going to little other friends' houses and eating their food and not being like ew like or not yucking other people's yum. Like it's just like I'm so lucky that I never necessarily had that like experience lunchbox experience where people are like, what is that? Like people are always just like
Right.
having very interesting foods and sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's one of those fascinating things in travel is how this plant has so much, a lot of the origin points of this plant, like starting, of course, in ancient China, but from India, like all these kind of cultural case studies, whether it's recent history or ancient history, and how this plant expresses itself today with that diversity you were mentioning, Phil, across different, you know, communities, whatever they may be. There's a lot of history tied to this plant. I mean, on that note, I'd like to kind of talk about the healing legacy of cannabis and hemp. And this question is for both of you. You know, cannabis and hemp has been used for thousands of years as a plant medicine. How does this ancient healing lineage influence the way you approach your work today? Why don't we start with you, Rose?
Okay, awesome. I would say that it really it inspires me to continue like the responsibility of the impact of the plant. And because, in ancient cultures, they they were more they had access to like natural medicine. They didn't have what we have today, right? And so it was sort of more prevalent to use, you know, holistic herbal remedies. And so I kind of like have taken it upon myself to scale back my city girl life and kind of, okay, I'm going to make this tea, I'm going to make this nettles tea, out of my yard versus okay, I'm going to drive to town, I'm going to buy it in the tea bag, that kind of thing. And so I think that there's a lot of responsibility of continuing, like you were saying, Phil, like that knowledge. You skipped a generation. I feel like in my lineage or my heritage, it has skipped many generations, and now it is just now becoming, I guess, cool to be woo woo or like make your own tea out of your garden, right? But at the same time, the impact for me is that I know that my ancestors and our ancestors did that, and they had that trust in the plant and in nature, and so I really feel responsible to continue doing that, not only for myself but for others. So.
How about you, Phil?
Yeah. I'm so lucky. I grew up in a household where my dad had that like naked man that had all the pressure points, and I would just be like, "Ew," like, or like my dad would like give me a very like try to align my body and give me a super uncomfortable massage, and as a kid, I'm like, this sucks. This is like not like a real massage. And like he would have these like weird plants growing out in the front yard. And I'm like, this is so weird. But like, and then you like grow to be an adult, and you're like, oh, I never really like we never took like aspirin or Tylenol or whatever growing up. My dad was always like, here, have this like brewed pot of whatever, 百蛮根葱剂, right? And like I'm so grateful that was just always like it always did make me better, but like the basic principles of TCM, Taoism, all of it, it's all about yin yang, it's about balance. And that's what cannabis does, right? And it's one of, in fact, cannabis was there's just like, it's effectively like the Bible of like traditional Chinese herbs that they researched. It's from 5,000 years ago, called 本草纲目. And cannabis is listed, right? And there's even actually like a deity, a goddess, the hemp goddess, and like, it's beautiful. It's really awesome. I mean, and I just think about how it just goes back to balance.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing about yin yang is there's a dot in the other that represents the opposite, right? So even though there's balance, you have to have a little bit of the other in the other half to create harmony. And yeah, if there's anything wrong with your body, there's an imbalance. And that's the simplicity. It's like, how do you figure out what you need if you're sick, whatever, to reach that equilibrium again? And it's so simple. Like, I'm like, wow, like, people have been doing this for a couple of years. They like survived, right? And that's not to say like Western medicine doesn't have its importance in this, but what I think is so awesome now with like the advent of like AI, and like we now have this whole kind of research and like modern research, and like we can now pair like, what were they talking about? What were these pressure points like doing in this body that we can now like actually understand what is happening, besides it being like this like miracle drug, right? So I just am really excited actually, because there's now a real connection of like what thousands of years of research is now coming to light of like, why are we existing in the way, why are all these things connected?
Yeah. No, I think often about like framing time, right? Of how travel, the internet, connectivity, information sharing, just in the last 100 years, we're like alive at this very specific moment in history, where less than 100 years ago, cannabis was part of the US medical pharmacopoeia. And as you dig into every other culture around the world, pretty much there's some kind of medicinal application and history that's documented of cannabis and hemp and cultural heritage, and which also goes in that spiritual health side. And I feel like this plant coming in at a very specific time evolved toward this, I guess, this melding of Eastern and Western healing modalities. And it kind of opens up these conversations around holistic health and the healing arts and the natural healing arts, and makes space for this, like, I think, negotiation in the best of ways of like, what does the future look like going forward? All pointing back into this notion of balance. So it always blows my mind how this plant operates in ways to facilitate balance with the more space that it gets to be able to be accessible. So let's jump into wellness and well-being a little bit. Actually, before we do that, let's kind of get a little bit out of the heady stuff. If you guys could each share one of your favorite experiences, meaning a curated travel experience that you've provided, that dovetails into tourism and wellness and well-being. Do you mind sharing a little bit about a moment that stands out where you were part of an experience that you helped curate or your product was part of, that you believe kind of exemplifies this uniqueness of cannabis as a travel experience for wellness and well-being? Rose, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. One certainly comes to mind. We do tours here on the farm, as you know, and one of them is an educational program called the Ganjier program up here in Salmon Creek. And they have incredible people coming through every summer, and it's really great that they come to our farm. And after hearing Johnny's story and his experiences here on the farm, we end up at the top of the farm where I have my gong set up. And it just so happened that this tour actually had Ricky Williams, the football player, a part of this tour. And I remember thinking, wow, super cool, a tough football player. He started the Heisman brand. And next thing I know, after, smoking a little bit of, I believe it was either mom's weed or whitethorn rose, I started, a 5 to 10 minute sound session and kind of guided everyone into like a calm place of presence and being. And at the very end, when I turned around, the big beautiful football player was in tears. And I remember thinking, this is why I do this, because there is that, you know, that notion or perception that it's not safe for men to be open about their emotions, or, and I think that that really just gave to the impact that creating a safe space for, like you said, the balance fell. Like, it's such a big deal to me. And the other word I use for balance is harmony. So, when you are out of harmony with yourself, when your body is out of harmony. And so I think that connection for me and Ricky went really deep, and he actually ended up reading my star chart later on for like an hour and a half. We just really connected. And yeah, the impact that that one tour had on my life, and as well as his, will be connected forever. And yeah, and that's just one of the many, many stories of, what our tours have done here on the farm, and including the sound as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a time where on our way to Mendocino, we stopped by the Madrones, and we did it was something that we would always kind of swing by there on the way to um, summer camp for Cannabis Meadowlands. But once they actually invite us, a couple of different brands to kind of create an experience there. And it's just beautiful. It's, a B&B in itself. They have their farm, they have their estate farm, and then it's in the redwoods, it's in Philo. It's just beautiful. And I'm so grateful to have been a part of that experience where, food and the expression of just being outside and, like, having the ground beneath your feet and interacting with other like-minded individuals, just sharing your love of cannabis and coming up with ideas on how you can cross promote and collaborate. And um, yeah, it's any chance that I can get to go outside and be with the outdoors. I think that's a truly unique experience that I hope more and more people will want to create that for themselves, like a journey that is more self-reflective versus going on vacation to party. It's going on vacation to be with yourself and learn more about yourself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, data and information in the cannabis travel audience, right? Which is different from the cannabis consumer audience.
Mhm.
This cannabis travel audience is about 72 million Americans, 24% of which don't self-identify as cannabis consumers, but they crave amazing life experiences, and they're not afraid of going on a farm, meeting amazing healers, participating in an activity to gain knowledge and to have a great life experience. So that little segment of that cannabis travel audience, I think, is really unique when you couple it with I'd say the mindset of being out of your routines in a new place, not only open to, but probably looking for new information and new understandings. So it's when then you start thinking about the resident and visitor, spend and how their psychology is so different. I think of when I travel, you can justify some experiences because it's kind of a while in Rome mentality versus, a budget driven. So I think as the California cannabis and the global cannabis experience economy matures, this space is such a powerful engine of creating these wellness focused, authentic, true to the plant experiences to propel the industry in the right way with the right kind of value set, honestly. Let's dive a little deeper into the experience. Rose, do you mind just walking us through what a sound bath experience is like, and what to expect for somebody who hasn't done it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone is different. I think it depends on, if we're talking out here on the farm, let's go with that. So, at the top of our farm, um, first of all, I just ask everyone to get comfortable. And I like to close my eyes because it helps me tune into my body. So I invite people to close their eyes as well, and to feel into the safe space that we've created together. And that trust that really comes up, it's not only trust in myself and Johnny and the farm, but it's self trust. And so I like to, kind of just be with people in that moment. And then what happens is from there, I'll decide if it's just the gong hanging, then I'll play the gong. But if not, maybe I'll start with something a little lighter, like a chime, and kind of ease people into feeling, content and and present. It's really about presence and slowing down enough to feel into your body. And after a few minutes of either chimes or the gong, um, I will bring people back by basically just asking them, to take some deep breaths and feel any changes or shifts that they might have felt in their body, or, any sensations that they got during the sound. And not to skip ahead, but there is a lot of, processing that can happen during the sound and after as well. And so I like to, allow the space after that for some silence. And silence is one of the biggest things we can do, especially in this day and age for ourselves, right? Like, when are we off our phone, off the screen, not talking to somebody? When are we just sitting in silence with ourselves? It's very, very rare. And so I like to offer that as well at the very end. And, kind of allow what comes up for people. I like to allow the space as well if people want to talk about it after, or give me a hug, or like I said, when Ricky was, in tears, he shared his experience with me. Um, and yeah, so it's really, really different for everyone and where they are in their journey. I've definitely had people that say, cool sounds, bro, and to me that it's kind of like that saying that's like, you can only love as deeply as you love yourself, or you can only meet people as deep as you've met yourself. And so really it's just like a personal reflective journey. And I will say this, I have a really hard time with the word healer, because I'm a facilitator. I have nothing to do with people's healing journey. That is their own. And if I can, you know, um, help people embody what they're feeling and kind of get them back into self reflection, that's where my true work comes in. Is I'm reflecting when I'm giving and holding space as like a very intentional place of love, because if there's anything else coming out of me, it's going to go into them, right? And so it's sort of like a reset for me, helping reset others and find that harmony. So it's yeah, I think I'm rambling now, but it's a really, really cool part of the tour and I really enjoy it. And I've also started doing yoga and sound baths in town as well, because I wanted to spread out outside the farm as well. So if people can't make it to the farm, uh, let me know. Maybe you can catch me in town too. So.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, but a lot of the words you draw out in that explanation of, being present, breath work, intention, it's especially that shift with, I think, time and space, right? Especially with the entheogenic part, like reorientating yourself in a different way with time and space to be present in a way that you rarely are. Like, all of these things tap into that well-being kind of side, which of course is connected to wellness.
Yeah, and just to add to that, cannabis as well, I almost say that like sound is a modality, but cannabis is the vehicle almost. Like it's like when you combine the two, cannabis already helps me slow down. And I know that's like, haha, stoner joke, like, oh, you're slowing down. But really, like, I need that silence and that slow pace of life because
Mhm.
then everything else just comes together better. It just, and I'm sure same with food and cannabis and wellness, Phil. Like, I feel like when I'm more intentional with what I'm putting in my body or how I'm putting it in my body, um, one of my favorite gurus, she eats in silence. And I just have been practicing that. And so, yeah, I think it's all really tied together.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Phil, I mean, from a different point of view, taking it a little bit more toward the wellness side and application and mainstream travel, Potli has 3 incredible SKUs right now, and they're packaged and branded in a way that's so palatable for like travel tourism hotel. Can you talk a little bit about about those Potli products today and how you see these showing up in an experiential way in tourism, and kind of the wellness functionality behind each of your products?
Certainly. So we just looked at your day. What's the hardest thing to do? It's to wake up, it's to go to sleep, and during the day you just kind of need a pick me up, right? So we started with, I think a really good day starts with really good sleep. And so our best selling SKU that came from our honey was our goodnight chews. And we made this set of chews because it's easy, ready to go. We were known for our honey, but it was kind of a difficult thing to, even when we made it into small packaging. Honey is not necessarily the most on the go thing, and so we started to make these chews only sweetened by our honey, and our goodnight chews is where we started because we knew that to make a perfect ratio of CBN to CBD, that's really where your health starts, is having wonderful, wonderful sleep. And once you're up, and going about your day, we have these ginger chews. You can, have them at any time of the day. They're just 5 milligrams of CBD. And that's one of those things where, like, in my, teens and as a childhood, that was an item that I always saw my parents had on the table. There's always ginger chews around, and I was like, "Why do you guys like these? Like this very taffy kind of candy?" And now I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world. And so, it's really funny how things change. And I'm obsessed with ginger chews. I always have kind of things going on with my gut, and so I'm always looking for ways to just like almost prep my gut so that there's a total also gut to brain connection. So if, I'm always looking for ways to just like come and present and be the best version of myself. And that's what these ginger chews are to me. And we have our play, which is our THC. And I think about play in the fact of, the flavors are passion fruit coated with matcha. So this was my favorite drink as a kid. That's my boba order if you go to any boba shop. So I really infused a lot of like things that reminded me of these moments, right? Like a
Mhm.
passion fruit green tea reminds me of a hot summer's day where like I'm just out there being a kid, genuinely being a kid, and I'm wondering, and I'm an only child, so I was constantly just playing with myself, not like in that way, but like playing, just being like a kid, a
Yeah.
genuine kid. And I think that that's, yeah, those are the reason why I created those products, and that's the reason why of the backstory. And for specifically for travel, we've put them in travel sizes. So there's 5 to a pack, and they're really easy for grab and go. You keep it in your bag, and especially for travel, you want to get somewhere, and especially if there's a time difference or whatever, you want to like wake up and feel like ready to seize the day. And so these are kind of here to maximize your experience when you travel.
Awesome. 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 Um, so let's do one more question for you, Felicity.
Mhm.
Um, Let's dive a little bit into the food side, because this is, you really lean into these kind of kitchen, and I'd like you to speak a little bit more to the honey quality as well, if you don't mind, just like the craft of the honey. That's such a signature ingredient for the vegan kind of edibles that you create. But I'd also like you to just share a little bit with this audience about the collaboration with Mr. Juice in San Francisco and what we did there.
Yeah, I mean, this man is the first year opening Mr. Juice, got a Michelin star. And you actually introduced me, Brian, and you have a really awesome story. I don't know if you want to drop that here, but thank you so much for connecting us. We kind of have like a larger, like, there's always so many different like threads that connect you. And as I mentioned before, my family is in the food industry, specifically selling to Asian restaurants. And so that like restaurant where Mr. Jew currently is, was a restaurant and a customer of ours for many, many years. And Mr. Jew's, maybe this was like the second or third year into them opening up the restaurant, getting the Michelin star. We had launched our shrimp chips product, and that was so crazy out there. No one really, some of there was the Asians that were just so pumped and excited. And then there were like, I remember we got this like Food Beast article and people were like, why would you infuse shrimp chips? And I was like, but why not? And so it was just like polarizing, but all news is good news, right? Like people are talking about it and you're making a splash. And oh gosh, it was just really fun. But the shrimp chips was really something, we made honey, we made sriracha, we made all these ingredients. It was our first foray into ready to eat, ready to serve. And it was just one of those things that kind of went viral on the internet. Everyone had an opinion and people either loved them or hated them. And Mr. Juice was so kind to lend us one of his recipes from his recipe books that had just come out in our little magazine that we had made. And this was in response to, this was during the pandemic. And, there was a lot of hate towards elderly people in our community. And we wanted to utilize our platform as a way to talk about why this was happening in our community and what we could do to talk about it in the news, because it wasn't necessarily being shown. And how can we make our community safer by, talking about what was happening and being out there and sharing what was going on. And yeah, so grateful for that introduction, Brian, and so grateful for that piece of, I don't know, that magazine kind of has lived on. It's on my wall right now. Like it's one of my most proudest pieces of content that we've ever put out there. Yeah. And it's just cool. It's just cool. It's like, what?
When you sent me that, I opened up the mail and saw it. I'm like, this is rad. This is it was so cool to see that come together. And
we called it Courage Over Comfort. Like, it was just good vibes everywhere. So I'm very proud of that, and also the team and all of the stories that were in there. And that story led to many other connections of people working together, starting businesses together. Yeah, it was just one of those things where it was a magical thing that even like made it out there alive. I mean, putting out a magazine was kind of like crazy for our very small team, and then for it to continue having a life of its own after it was published was really amazing to see.
Yeah, and also Potli did a sound bath kind of exclusive experience at the Artistry Lounge in West Hollywood. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it kind of came from that magazine. So I got connected to a woman who, her name is Jamida, and she comes from the Malaysian royal family. And one of her modalities is talking about halal and hemp, and she also does sound healing as well. She's an incredible facilitator, healer, whatever you would want to call her. And I got a DM from someone that I was a huge fan of. His name is Masego, and he was like, I am a huge fan of your honey, because he's a singer, and he but he was like, I've been hearing all about these shrimp chips and I can't get my hands on them. Like, where can we get these? And I was like, I got you. Like, I'm coming to LA. Let's meet up. And I met, and I decided that, the artistry would be the perfect place, because they celebrate creators, they celebrate artists, and they have this kind of section in the back where, we could really sit there and have a private experience. And so thank you so much to Artistry for, allowing us to have that. And, and Jamina is also a big fan of Masego, and we all rolled up, and then we're like, let's just hang out and just like, talk. And he had never had a sound healing before. And so that was kind of really special to be able to share that. And wow, what a crazy thing. We're like, an artist that you're such a huge fan of, to be like, oh, I use your honey. And like, in fact, every one of his PA had to have it on them like at all times, just so that like if he wanted it to come out of a session, like she had to make sure that she had it. And then we used our ginger chews at that time. We were testing our ginger chews and using that to see if that would be, a right modality to express what we were trying to do, was create balance. So yes, that was the coolest thing ever. I mean, cannabis is wild. This is what I'm so grateful for. Like, this journey is crazy. Like, that's so wild that somebody that you could be such a huge fan of just writes you. Like, we didn't reach out to him, and for that all to come together. There's just so many crazy stories like that. And it's a blessed place. And I think it's because like our expression and what we do, we're all here to help people evangelize into like their higher self. And we are in the precipice of a lot of like connections and neurons firing, and like and then when you're creating the surface for these things to happen, these things happen to you by chance. Like, this is all luck, right? So it's a bit heady. I'm sorry. I'm getting in there, and I'm definitely rambling, but it's just, I am so like, when these things happen, it's like, wow, like I kind of had chills just thinking about like, I forgetting about that experience, actually. So thank you for asking, because like, what a beautiful way to like remember and commemorate it.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I love Masego too. So
Yeah.
I like that the fangirling was mutual. That is like so cool. I love it. Wow.
I'm like trying to keep it cool, and we were just like,
yeah. Oh, how cool. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, two more questions. Rose, Huckleberry Hill Farms is a sanctuary, really, and it just embodies intention, beautiful flowers, cultivars, a lot of care and love. Can you share a little bit about Huckleberry Hill from a cultivar point of view, and what cultivars are your favorites that you guys grow, and also what ones you feel pair well with your sound bats?
Absolutely. Huckleberry Hill Farms was started by my partner, John Casali, and this is actually his childhood home that the farm is still on. And so it has, couple generations of love. And, my current garden was his mom's garden. So I inherited that basically directly from her, her to Johnny to me. But, and yeah, one of the things that was also inherited when Johnny actually, he has a long, incredible story as well. But when he was released from prison, one of his childhood best friends had saved his mom's cultivar while he was in prison for 8 years. So when he got back from prison, his friend handed him that original genetic that he grew with his mom, which is now 50 years old. And that was called Fruit Loops back then, but now we call it Paradise Punch. And so everything that we grow here on the farm is either a cross or a baby of the Paradise Punch. And so back my first year being here actually was when the white thorn rose and the mom's weed was created. And I just want to be really clear that those are the same crosses, Paradise Punch to Lemon OG. They're just different expressions, different phenotypes. And so we actually dug them both up because we liked both of them and we remommed them. And so now that is what gives us mom's weed and white thorn rose today. I would say we have a bunch of new crosses as well. They're sort of hard to keep straight because we are back crossing to white thorn rose and back crossing white thorn rose into herself and then Paradise Punch back into herself. So it's getting a little wild over here. We're having a lot of fun breeding and making new cultivars. We are also putting a little more energy into spreading that love and spreading our cultivars through seed sales. So, and if anyone hearing this is interested, hit me up, DM me. But the thing that I really like most is figuring out, what cultivar people like the best for their bodies, right? Because a lot of my girlfriends are like, dude, white thorn rose is my daytime girl. Like I cannot at night. Like, I think she does have some uplifting qualities that maybe aren't necessarily the right for, hey, let's sit down and have a mellow breathing time for this sound bath. So I would definitely recommend something more like mom's weed, which does have a more grounding effect. And it's funny because she does taste a little earthier than the white thorn rose. The white thorn rose is very fruity dessert. And so mom's weed does have that like calm, creamy, and earthy kind of taste and also effect. So yeah, I would say that would be one of my favorite pairings for sound is mom's weed. And it's really kind of cool because we honor our mothers here, both being passed away. And so it's really just kind of like an ode to the moms here. And as you were saying, Fel, like we're so lucky to have these matriarchs because Johnny was pretty much raised by his mother. I was pretty much raised by my mother. And just the impact that those two left on our lives, like we want to talk about them and share their stories forever. And yeah, it's really I don't always like to say, that, oh, the plant is a female and so, giving her this attention. I think that like you were saying, the balance is really good. And, with Johnny's masculine and my feminine, I think we do a really good job kind of bringing, the peace to the land and the farm is like, it definitely is a sanctuary, but it's definitely also a battleground,
Oh, totally.
and so, uh, yeah, I don't know. And so, yeah, cannabis has definitely helped, just wrap all of it up with like there is so much intention with how that plant got here, Paradise Punch,
Mhm.
and how the intention that I want to take her throughout my life, and if Johnny leaves me someday, I'll have this plant to continue to make the impact with. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and Huckleberry Hill also really embodies, I think, in many ways, the current day and the future of cannabis travel and tourism. It was the first permitted cannabis tourism farm in California. It's also a farm that's doing amazing work with Columbia University on the therapeutic properties that are expressed with certain sun-grown leaning cultivation craft from a medicinal and wellness point of view. So that's a whole nother episode. But Johnny's been an absolute visionary and leader with what he's built with you there, Rose, at Huckleberry Hill, as you know.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Can I just add one little quick thing from the Columbia report? It's actually very recently come out. Maybe I shouldn't even say it, but we might have something in white thorn rose that actually helps produce new neurons.
Yeah.
So we're figuring out some very interesting things that, I think are going to only amplify what we're doing here with education and tourism and yeah.
Wonderful. Well, where can listeners find more out about you both? Let's start with you, Felicity.
Hey, you can find me at Get Potli and getpotli.com. If you want to shop for anything, we would love to offer, everyone on this listening to this podcast 15% off for Beard Bros. Just type in that and you'll get your 15%. And if you want to find me personally, I'm at Fells_factory. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Rose?
Yeah, I'm gonna look you up. So our website is pickhumboldt.com, and you can also hit us up on Instagram. That's probably the easiest, best way. So Huckleberry Hill Farms _WTR for Whitethorn Rose, because Johnny did get taken down recently, and I'm personally at ROWZ Rose with underscores in between those letters. So yeah, and you can also, like Brian was said, we do tours. Humboldt County, we have to go through a third-party tour guide at the moment, and he's really awesome. His name is Matt with Humboldt Cannabis Tours. So we are getting some dates on the calendar here with them tomorrow. So you can check that out as well.
Awesome. And Huckleberry Hill, it was the very first landmark on the Cannabis Trail. So part of the experience is getting to see that and be part of it. Well, thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you both for being here and sharing your knowledge and experiences and the work that you're doing to help shape this new era. Travel Tuesday is brought to you by the Beard Bros Media Network, where culture meets industry. I'm your host, Brian Applegarth. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next month for another episode of Travel Tuesday. Thank you both.
Thank you.